president's self-proclaimed fixer, Michael Cohen, and the woman he tried to silence.
Ms. Daniels, you have a message for the president.
The porn star known as Stormy Daniels.
Why is porn star Stormy Daniels in that courtroom today?
It's a great publicity opportunity.
Here she is. She's going through security.
The hearing wasn't about Daniels.
Stormy, we love you!
But fallout from stunning FBI raids on Cohen in early April. Cohen claimed some of the material taken was covered by attorney-client privilege and was asking to review it before the feds. It's a hearing that went from circus to shocking.
No, I'm looking at your face. Mine's the same. What the heck happened?
What happened was lawyers for Cohen had just told the court that Fox News host Sean Hannity was a Cohen client, meaning some of the communication between the two could be privileged.
Michael Cohen's attorneys tried every which way not to release this name. And the judge said, no, I'm ordering you to release the name. And he stood up and he said the name, Sean Hannity.
When they said Sean Hannity's name in the courtroom, there was a gasp. And I gasped too, not because I thought it was illegal, because it's certainly not, but it's just so weird.
How are you, Mr. President?
I'm very good.
And surprising, in part, because Sean Hannity reports on the president all the time. Until this day, he'd never revealed he had a relationship with Mr. Trump's personal attorney.
Michael Cohen never represented me in any legal matter. I never retained his services. I never received an invoice. I never paid Michael Cohen for legal fees.
But earlier on his radio show, he made it clear he expected some of their conversations to be covered by privilege.
I might have handed him $10. I definitely want attorney-client privilege on this, something like that.
Following another hearing, the judge assigned a so-called special master, an independent former judge named Barbara Jones, who will review the seized materials to determine what prosecutors can see and what is protected by privilege. Attorneys for both Cohen and Trump are getting copies of the seized material to review and say the president is willing to assist if needed. But based on what Mr. Trump told Fox and Friends, there may not be that much for him to look at.
Mr. President, how much of you
Because your possessions are our possessions now.
There's a source close to the investigation I spoke to who told me what they took, and it was financial documents, computers, files. It was an extensive and exhaustive search.
And extraordinary.
There's been such a torrent of news under Donald Trump that it's easy to miss just how significant the search of Michael Cohen's office is. Michael Cohen's job was to keep Donald Trump's secrets. If there's anything Donald Trump was involved in that was remotely controversial, Michael Cohen knows what it is. So the fact that the government now has the keys, literally, to Cohen's office and his email and his phone and his safe deposit box means they are in the heart of Donald Trump's heart.
Which could explain why the president was acting as if he was wounded.
They broke into the office of one of my personal attorneys, good man, and it's a disgraceful situation. It's a total witch hunt. It's frankly a real disgrace. It's an attack on our country in a true sense.
The warrant had President Trump's name on it, according to sources familiar with the matter. It's the first known direct mention of the president in a warrant. It also referenced an investigation into wire fraud, bank fraud, and campaign finance violations.
A source says some of the documents seized had to do with the porn star Stormy Daniels.
CNN has learned they were looking for information related to a payment Cohen made to the adult film actress. Daniels says she had sex with the president in Lake Tahoe in 2006.
Did you want to have sex with him?
No, but I didn't say no. I'm not a victim. I'm not.
It was entirely consensual.
Oh, yes.
The White House denied Trump ever had a relationship with her. But Michael Cohen set up an LLC and then used it to pay Daniels $130,000. He claims the money was his own, pulled from a home equity loan. The payment, which Daniels says was to keep her from telling her story to the press, was made 13 days before the election, which could be a violation of campaign finance law.
Thank you.
In addition to the information about Daniels, sources tell CNN agents were also looking for other ways Cohen may have tried to suppress negative information before the election, including material connected to Karen McDougal. McDougal is a former playmate who told CNN's Anderson Cooper she had a 10-month affair with Trump in 2006, which the White House says he denies.
Were you in love with him?
I was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And do you think he was in love with you?
He was, yeah. He always told me he loved me.
CNN has learned the agents who raided Cohen also sought communications between him and the president regarding that now infamous Access Hollywood tape.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the you can do anything.
The tape surfaced in October 2016, a month before the election.
The timing of the release of the Access Hollywood tape does give rise to certain suspicions.
It went public about 4 p.m. on October 7th, 2016, 1/2 hour after the Justice Department blamed Russia for hacking the DNC, and 1/2 hour before WikiLeaks began tweeting links to hacked emails from Hillary Clinton's campaign chair, John Podesta.
Now, the question may be, did Trump or anyone with the Trump campaign do something with WikiLeaks, with the Russians who hacked into the Clinton campaign's emails, to get that stuff released and distract from the release of the Access Hollywood tapes?
It's something federal investigators may be able to determine after the material is screened for attorney-client privilege. What else they might learn is unclear, but CNN anchor Don Lemon spoke with Cohen after the raid and says the lawyer is concerned.
He's worried not because he thinks he did anything illegal. He thinks in the end that it will be proven that everything he did was legal. He's worried because he thinks that they will look for something to charge him with.
What about the president? If Cohen ends up charged with a crime, could the fixer flip on Mr. Trump?
The criminal justice system is full of people who begin with tremendous bravado. I'll never flip. I'll protect my friends. But the prospect of years in prison focuses the mind in a way that bravado doesn't.
The president's tweeting seemed to reflect that concern. He bashed Maggie Haberman of the New York Times, who reported that Mr. Trump has verbally abused Cohen for years, and the president's lawyers are concerned the behavior could lead to Cohen flipping. The New York Times and a third-rate reporter named Maggie Haberman, who I don't speak to and have nothing to do with, are going out of their way to destroy Michael Cohen and his relationship with me in the hope that he will flip. She has covered Trump for years.
I think that it was very hard for him to read that it is possible that Michael Cohen could flip, and that it is possible that he could have helped do something to make that happen. And to be clear, people don't flip unless there is something to flip on.
The president also tweeted that Cohen is someone who I have always liked and respected. And later that day, he sent a random tweet about the possibility of pardoning a long-dead boxer just days after pardoning Scooter Libby, chief of staff for former Vice President Dick Cheney.
He just out of the blue completely issued this pardon 4 days after the search warrant execution. Looks to me like he's sending some sort of message there.
When asked directly if he was considering a pardon for Cohen, he said,
Stupid question.
even if Cohen doesn't flip, the raid on his office could yield trouble for the president. A source familiar with the matter tells CNN Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein has told the president he's not a target in the investigation of his personal lawyer, but that doesn't mean much.
What seems clear, Donald Trump is a subject. Subjects sometimes become targets and indicted, sometimes become witnesses and are let off.
What's clear is that this investigation is unlikely to go away. Court documents show the FBI was looking into Cohen months before the raid and was able to get a warrant to secretly monitor his emails. Ahead, who is this man and how is he connected to him and her and her and this guy? And why does it matter? The photographers who follow Michael Cohen want pictures, but federal prosecutors are looking for evidence. They want to know whether Cohen was part of a coordinated effort to squash negative stories about Donald Trump in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. Sources tell CNN that among the materials scooped up in the FBI raid were voice recordings of Michael Cohen talking to this man, Keith Davidson. There are 3 publicly reported negative stories people close to Mr. Trump seemingly tried to kill in the lead up to the election. Davidson is connected to 2. One is Stormy Daniels. Her so-called hush agreement started with a call to Davidson from Michael Cohen.
I think he said, hey, remember that matter that we dealt with in 2011? It's resurfacing again. Can you find out what's going on?
In 2011, Davidson says he worked for Daniels to successfully remove an online story about her and Donald Trump.
You know, it's been reported that she wanted a story that was written about her on a tabloid website taken down.
Was that story involving Donald Trump and the alleged affair?
Yes.
The White House denies there was ever any relationship between Trump and Daniels. But both Daniels and Michael Cohen agree she was paid $130,000 just before the 2016 presidential election. Daniels says it was to keep silent about their alleged relationship. This is the non-disclosure agreement she is now suing to get out of. It's a civil court case now, delayed because Michael Cohen intends to take the 5th due to the ongoing criminal investigation in New York.
Hi, everyone.
But while Daniels may not be free to disclose, she's already been disclosing plenty, including appearances on 60 Minutes.
The exact sentence used was, they can make your life hell in many different ways.
And on The View, where she released a sketch of a man she says threatened her in 2011 if she spoke about the alleged affair.
Is that the person that threatened you?
Absolutely.
The second negative story about Trump that Davidson is connected to involves Karen McDougal, the former playmate who says she loved Donald Trump and dated him for 10 months in 2006.
Did you think maybe this would lead to a marriage?
Maybe.
The White House denies the affair. McDougal says a company called American Media Incorporated, the parent company of the National Enquirer, gave her a $150,000 contract in August of 2016, ensuring her silence after passing on her story earlier in the year. Her attorney for that deal? Keith Davidson.
You're saying AMI suddenly came back to you with interest in
Well,
the
to
story.
Keith, yes.
McDougal says she thought she was signing on to a deal that would buy her silence, but allow her to publish a few health and fitness columns for AMI publications. She now believes there was a larger conspiracy at work.
They have accused you of being part of a nexus, that you and Michael Cohen and, AMI were all colluding to keep her story out of the press.
Right.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of what happened?
Anything that Karen and I discussed along the way is covered by the attorney-client privilege, and I'm prevented from communicating on it.
He may not be allowed to discuss it, but it does raise questions.
Let me ask you about these coincidences. Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels, both in situations where they both had deals that involved allegations of an affair with Donald Trump. Both of those deals were silenced. It just seems like an awfully strange coincidence that they both landed in your lap, don't you think?
No, not at all.
Why not?
No, I mean, I have a very active practice. There are few attorneys that would go against large corporations, powerful celebrities. That's one thing that I'm known for. And these two ladies came to me from two completely different places.
Davidson does seem to have a niche practice involving celebrities and sex scandals, but that does not explain why, after he sealed the deal between McDougal and AMI in 2016, he called Michael Cohen.
I think I called him as a professional courtesy to let him know that a matter was resolved, and that as a professional courtesy that it may or may not have involved his client.
Was he involved in the deal at all?
Certainly wasn't involved on our end. And there's no basis for me to believe that he was involved or had any communication with AMI.
Karen McDougal's current attorney, Peter Striss, doesn't buy it.
Keith Davidson told us that after the deal was done, he contacted Michael Cohen, saying that he was just calling as a professional courtesy. Does that sound right to you?
To put it nicely, it does not sound right, because the whole point of this contract is that it was a confidential agreement between Karen and American media, where the value of the story to American media, supposedly, is that it's kept under wraps.
The word collusion is a loaded word right now. Is that the proper word? Is that the word you want to use?
And I'm very comfortable telling you that personally, I'm very troubled by Mr. Davidson, Mr. Cohen, their relationship and the work that they've done together, and I do view the things that they've done as collusive.
A spokesman for Davidson says any characterization of Attorney Davidson's relationship with Mr. Cohen as anything other than adversarial yet professional is false. Striss has now negotiated a settlement between McDougal and AMI.
They don't own her story anymore. She doesn't have to worry that they're going to sell it.
If she does, AMI will get a small cut, but Striss says any such sale is unlikely.
Next year. She has no plans of doing that. That was never the objective here. All we sought in this lawsuit was to void the contract. This wasn't a lawsuit for money.
Someone you may hear from again? Keith Davidson. A spokesman says he's now cooperating with the federal investigators behind the Cohen raid. Now, there is a third publicly known attempt by someone close to Trump to kill a negative story about him in the lead up to the election. This time, the person reported to be behind it is a man named David Pecker, a Trump supporter who is also the wealthy owner of AMI. Reporter Ronan Farrow writes in the New Yorker magazine that Pecker was instrumental in killing an unsubstantiated 2015 story from a longtime Trump doorman who claimed he heard Trump had a child out of wedlock with one of his employees in the 80s.
Really, the crux of this, for many of the sources that stepped forward, was reporting was halted, they allege, on direct orders from David Pecker.
As for AMI, it says the suggestion that David Pecker has ever used company funds to shut down this or any investigation is not true. These claims are reckless, unsubstantiated, and false. The question now is, are there more women out there with agreements that keep them from speaking publicly about alleged relationships with the president? Stormy Daniels' current attorney says he's sure of it.
From everything we've seen, there's a number of NDAs out there that were executed over a significant period of time. My client is not alone. I'm sure there's a number of women that have found themselves in the same situation.
Ahead, Keith Davidson, Michael Cohen, and this man, Elliot Brody. What's the connection between the three? More hush money. It would be an understatement to say Michael Cohen was having a bad week. Raided by the FBI, emails and recordings relating to payments made to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal confiscated, according to a source familiar with the matter. And then,
new reporting that Cohen reportedly negotiated a $1.6 million settlement for a top Republican fundraiser involving a Playboy playmate.
Yet another hush agreement involving President Trump's personal lawyer. But that isn't the only similarity. The initial attorney for the playmate, Keith Davidson, Stormy Daniels' former attorney. The names on the contract, the same aliases that were used in this 2016 contract with Stormy Daniels, David Dennison, and Peggy Peterson. Even the payments made from Essential Consultants, LLC, the company Cohen created that shelled out the money to Stormy Daniels.
Michael Cohen is the common glue that sort of runs throughout this.
This agreement was for Elliott Brody, a major GOP fundraiser and wealthy investor who owns a stake in a defense contracting company. Ken Vogel is a Washington reporter for the New York Times.
He was originally an investor where he invested pension funds and other sort of institutional clients' money, but he's gotten involved in defense contracting where he's worked with foreign governments to help them with private intelligence collection. This has put him into contact with this sort of high-flying world of international intrigue.
He's a very influential man. In the business world and in a political sense.
Would you say powerful?
I think anyone, including he, would admit that this is a powerful man.
In addition to representing Karen McDougal, attorney Peter Stris now represents the woman who had a relationship with Brody.
I represent a woman who has had painful information about her life thrust into the public, involving, and when I say public figures, plural, it's not just Mr. Brody, it's Mr. Cohen as well.
After the reports emerged, Brody acknowledged the payments and the affair, but he didn't admit to being the father. In a statement, he said, quote, "It is unfortunate that this personal matter between two consenting adults is the subject of national discussion just because of Michael Cohen's involvement. I retained Mr. Cohen after he informed me about his prior relationship with Mr. Davidson."
I thought his statement was fascinating because what his statement said was Mr. Cohen contacted him and said there is a matter involving you and the lawyer for the other party has reached out to me and I know him. That's what we know has happened. When you think about that, or when the public thinks about that, they have to think about it in the context of everything else we know. This isn't Jane Doe and John Smith, in which case, you give people the benefit of the doubt, you don't jump to conclusions. This is Michael Cohen and Keith Davidson.
This may have been the first time Brody hired Cohen as counsel, but they've both been in Trump's orbit for some time.
As we understand it, they met through the campaign, and they appear to have forged this bond as a result of working on the finance committee for Donald Trump.
Until recently, Brody served with Cohen as deputy finance chairman for the RNC. Brody was also one of the first major donors to back Trump.
At a time when Donald Trump didn't have a lot of institutional support from the elite Republican donor class, he got in very close to Donald Trump and became a finance chair for his campaign.
Brody has a bit of a checkered past. In 2009, he pleaded guilty in a New York pension fund bribery case. But that wasn't enough to prevent Trump and Cohen from working with Brody.
He could raise a lot of money quickly, and he did that for the Trump campaign. Trump was happy to have that.
After Trump's electoral victory, Brody was quick to tout his connections to the president-elect to propel his business.
Brody was quite overt in advertising his connections to Donald Trump, and that got them into meetings that they wouldn't necessarily have had.
Brody thrived in Trump's Washington.
What's so significant here is the blurring of the lines between Elliott Brody's fundraising and Elliott Brody's business.
Multiple sources tell CNN one of Brody's business associates, George Nader, has been pulled into the web of Robert Mueller's special counsel.
Mueller is interested in Nader because of his visibility into the potential flow of money from the Middle East into efforts around Trump, potentially including political efforts.
While Nader cooperates and keeps a low profile, Cohen and those entangled with him are under the glare of the spotlight, including Sean Hannity.
I've said many times on my radio show, I hate the stock market. I prefer real estate. Michael knows real estate.
Despite reporting on Michael Cohen for years and deriding the raid on Cohen's office, hotel room, and home, Hannity never disclosed his connection with the president's attorney. That connection to Cohen remained murky until the court hearing where Hannity was revealed to be Cohen's third client. Then, The Guardian published a bombshell.
New tonight, Sean Hannity trying to fight back after a report that he's linked to a series of shell companies which have spent $90 million to buy nearly 900 homes across the country.
Dozens of the properties were purchased in 2013 at a discount caused by foreclosures. At the time, Hannity repeatedly criticized former President Barack Obama about the foreclosure rate.
And the dream of owning your own home has been made a nightmare under Obama for many Americans.
Some of Hannity's properties were reportedly purchased with mortgages backed by the U.S. Department for Housing and Urban Development, which Hannity did not disclose when he had HUD Secretary Ben Carson on his show in 2017. With each passing day, the Trump orbit grows larger. Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, Keith Davidson, Elliot Brody, and now Sean Hannity, with Michael Cohen as the common thread. Coming up, how did Michael Cohen wind up Trump's attorney?
That is, I think, when he caught the president's eye in a real way. He felt that Michael Cohen was an effective pit bull.
Donald Trump's fixer, Michael Cohen, grew up in Long Island, New York. He left home to attend American University in Washington, D.C., and then Cooley Law School in Michigan. He married Laura Schusterman, a Ukrainian emigre. Long before he ever met Trump, Cohen was a successful personal injury lawyer with a thriving business.
Michael Cohen actually had never wanted to be a hotshot lawyer. He was very into sort of celebrity culture. He was very into politics.
Trump biographer Michael D'Antonio says Cohen was also a prosperous businessman.
He had a taxi business where he owned a bunch of medallions, which up until 10 years ago were worth a great deal.
According to some reports, Cohen's taxi medallions or permits were worth millions. That is until rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft came along. In 2003, Cohen tried his hand at politics, running for a city council seat. Among the accomplishments he touted in this voter guide was, quote, "When the coffee shop in my neighborhood got lazy about its trash, I hectored them into obtaining a state-of-the-art disposal system." He lost that election, a minor setback for a man with a thriving real estate business.
As a young man, he read Art of the Deal avidly. I think he said that he read it more than once. At the very moment when he first could do it, he bought a unit in a Trump building. And then all of a sudden, his relatives were buying units in Trump buildings. And then Michael Cohen was buying multiple units in Trump buildings and on the board of one of them. I think that this looks like a fellow who was pursuing Donald Trump.
In 2006, Trump was battling to regain control of the condominium board at Trump World Tower. Cohen owned one of the condos and came to Trump's defense, according to the New York Times.
That is, I think, when he caught the president's eye in a real way. He felt that Michael Cohen was an effective pit bull. Cohen went and started working within the Trump organization.
Between Donald Trump and Affliction Entertainment,
Cohen would work for Donald Trump on much more than real estate deals.
one of the heavyweights in real estate.
There was also MMA, mixed martial arts.
Mr. Donald Trump.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Trump bought a stake in Affliction Entertainment.
I will say these are tough-looking guys.
In 2008, Michael Cohen was named Chief Operating Officer. Affliction set its sights on competing with the MMA powerhouse, the UFC.
Wow!
Do you think that it will take over the UFC?
It probably will. I mean, it's doing very well. All the fighters want to be with us, and I think it probably will take over.
Affliction folded in 2009. A year later, Michael Cohen created a website, shouldtrumprun.com.
If in fact Mr. Trump elects to run, there's already a grassroots in place for him at that time.
Trump did not enter the 2012 campaign, but soon he was preparing for 2016, and so was his ever-loyal attorney/fixer.
His devotion to Donald Trump is so great that when I met him a year or two before the presidential campaign began, he weighed about 50 pounds more. And there were orders that went out in Trump Tower that everyone's going to look their best by the time the boss declares. And wouldn't you know that Michael Cohen was 30 or 40 pounds lighter, and he continued to lose weight and bought new suits, and he looks really sharp. You know, so this is a guy who's so devoted to the boss that he'll go on a pretty tough diet in order to comply with an order.
In 2015, in the early stages of the Trump campaign, Cohen acted as a spokesman.
What he's saying is resonating with the people. Mr. Trump never made any derogatory or disparaging remarks about Mexican immigrants. I've never come across a situation where Mr. Trump has said something that's not accurate.
And then there was the class action lawsuit against Trump University, the real estate seminar that promised you too could get rich, just like Donald Trump.
If you don't learn from the people that we're going to be putting forward, and these are all people that are hand-picked by me.
But he did not hand-pick them, just one of the fraud claims made by former students. Once again, Michael Cohen went on the attack.
So when they talk about frauds and scams, why don't you ask like the 14-year-old boy who went with his mom and ended up making $1 million.
He seemed confident Trump would prevail.
Mr. Trump is doing incredibly well in this lawsuit.
But after a 5-year battle, Trump settled, agreeing to pay $25 million to former students. Then, in the late stages of the campaign, Cohen paid Stormy Daniels to keep quiet.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Michael Cohen's years of fierce loyalty would not be repaid by a position in President Trump's administration. Yet he has remained a fierce supporter. In March of 2017, Cohen, the sometimes Democrat, tweeted this photo, saying he once again was a Republican and, quote, "It took a great man to get me to make the switch."
You can almost say this is Donald Trump's mini-me.
Thank you all.
I think Michael Cohen is amazed that his life has gone the way it has and that he's gotten as far as he's gotten.
Ahead. So what's the big deal about the raid on a lawyer's office?
It's when the story takes a quantum leap into something unknowable and very different.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
No.
Why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth to your allegation?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's an attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael Cohen.
Michael Cohen had been the president's virtual vault, the keeper of secrets in his business and personal life.
The idea that the FBI now has access to every email, every communication, every phone call that Michael Cohen made, the fixer, the Ray Donovan, Trump's closest aide for his most sensitive, dicey material, it's that big a deal.
The raid signaled a major turning point in the Justice Department's investigations into Trump and his associates.
The Cohen search is almost like the day Whitewater turned into Monica Lewinsky. It's when the story takes a quantum leap into something unknowable and very different.
Reminiscent of an even greater political scandal involving an American president, when a White House staffer revealed one of Washington's most damning secrets.
That's correct. Mr. Butterfield, are you aware of the installation of any listening devices in the Oval Office of the President? I was aware of listening devices. Yes, sir.
I would say the closest Watergate parallel is when Alexander Butterfield, a relatively unknown official, went before the Senate Watergate Committee and said, there are tapes. There are tapes of conversations in the White House. That just changed everything.
Yet it seems there's never been a raid like this one in history, one that targeted a president's personal lawyer.
I have to believe that a search like this, which is so intrusive on a lawyer, on the president's lawyer, would only be allowed if there were serious crimes.
Each financial transaction could be its own crime.
Jennifer Rogers is a former federal prosecutor. She says investigators will be looking hard at seized evidence to see if Cohen broke any laws.
I think they're also looking at associated bank fraud and potentially money laundering crimes where these payments were funneled through shell companies. A home equity line of credit was obtained to pay off Stormy Daniels, as has been reported. If in getting the $130,000 line of credit, Michael Cohen told the bank that he was obtaining that to, say, do improvements to his house, that's a lie. You're not allowed to lie on federal forms to FDIC insured banks. That's a crime. So that would be a crime of bank fraud. If he was committing the election law violation by giving the benefit to the campaign of the silence of Stormy Daniels, and in the course of doing that, he wired the payment to her or to her lawyer to pay her off, then that would be a wire fraud.
Financial crimes can lead to years behind bars.
The bank fraud, mortgage fraud, money laundering crimes are very serious. Each of those counts is a 20-year maximum. You know, that's the statutory max. You know, people don't tend to get that much jail time, but it's a very serious charge.
Former Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli says the raid was over the top.
If you're interested in where the money went, you can get that via banks. You can get that via tax statements. The necessity of raiding a lawyer's office, home, and hotel is not apparent. This creates all sorts of Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment problems.
Questions have been raised as to why the Cohen raid was peeled off from special counsel Robert Mueller's investigations. The searches were carried out as part of an ongoing grand jury investigation conducted by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York and the FBI, separate from Mueller.
It's important for two reasons. One is that, Mueller has been criticized for expanding his mandate. He's supposed to be investigating Russian interference and anything that comes from that, like obstructing that investigation. To the extent that he starts to kind of edge beyond and start to look at the Trump organization's business and that sort of thing, Trump and his allies are going to say he's overreaching.
And Rogers says keeping Mueller on the Cohen case may have smacked of being political.
It's the Southern District of New York. It's headed by a Trump appointee, a Republican who just came in January. So there's no reason to believe it's a witch hunt.
So if Cohen is indicted and is offered a deal to testify against the president, would he flip? The stakes are high for Trump's right-hand man.
I think in the end, Michael Cohen will do what's best for his family. I know he is loyal to the president, but I'm not sure if that loyalty to the president outweighs the love he has for his family.
At this point, nobody knows exactly what investigators have on Cohen or how he'll react if they have enough to charge him.
I don't know that there's a whole lot here. It certainly looks a lot more spectacular when you've got the FBI going in, and that has all sorts of problems when you're going in after someone who's a private lawyer of the president.
So I just heard that they broke into the office of one of my personal attorneys.
I think the president is enraged by this on a lot of levels. And I think that he's already enraged by the Russia investigation. He's already enraged by Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. If you're the president, you are thinking this might be a tipping point for you. What are these guys doing and what are they trying to get at and what does this have to do with Russia? He believes this has crossed the red line. What he's going to do about it remains to be seen.
Thank you.